It's Ash from SuperVideos back for another video for The Last of Us on HBO. On this video, we're going to take a look at everything that we know so far about Season 2. Now, although there aren't that many details about the second season, there are some very interesting teases that we're going to take a look at. Now, one thing I do want to say, if you haven't played Part 1 and Part 2 of the game, you may not want to watch this video, not necessarily because it'll spoil things for you. I'll try not to be spoilery in this video, but you may not want to watch more so because some of it may not really make sense to you because we are not that far into the story, so you don't really know a lot of the stuff that I'll be talking about. So with that said, stay tuned. We'll be right back to break it all down. Alright, as always, before we dive into it, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. With that said, let's dive right into it. So the stuff that we're going to take a look at today is actually teases that came out of an after show that they did after the season 1 finale. All of the showrunners were there, as well as I think Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson, the voice actors for Joel and Ellie, who obviously had some roles in the TV adaptation as well. And the showrunners that were there were Craig Mazin and also Neil Druckmann, who was also the creator of the game. So these are the reveals that came out of that interview, which was mostly about season 1, but there were a lot of very interesting stuff that they teased about season 2. First, season 2 will be different than the games. Now this is definitely super interesting, and I know a lot of fans, especially those that are critics of the second game, are gonna look at this and they're gonna be thinking to themselves, they're probably gonna change Abby's story completely. That's not the case. I think what this means is that they're gonna be expanding the story and perhaps changing the narrative a little bit here and there, much like they already did for season 1. In fact, Craig Mazin said that the story in season 2 will deviate from the games, just like it deviated from the games for season 1, which was part 1. I think what he meant by that is don't expect significant changes, but do expect some changes here and there that change the narrative, but not to a point where it completely changes the story. So if you're expecting or hoping that this means that Abby won't get the same story and that the story will be different and things won't play out the way they did, you're wrong. That's probably not going to happen. The second point, Bella Ramsey will return as Ellie. Not that interesting or surprising. I mean, who else would play her? She played her in season 1. Why would they change the actress in season 2? It just doesn't make sense. But one thing I do want to say is Bella Ramsey was actually 17 in the events of season 1. But Ellie herself was meant to be 14 years old. So Bella Ramsey was playing a young character. But in season 2, Bella Ramsey will be 19, which is the same age as Ellie in part 2 of the games. So things will definitely play out quite nicely from that perspective. The third point, which I absolutely love that they confirmed, is that the second season will have more infected. I think one of the problems people had with the first season, and one of the ones that was, I think, more fair, was that season 1 had very limited interaction with the infected, and the world didn't seem like an apocalyptic zombie world. It didn't feel like a zombie show. So I'm glad that they confirmed that season 2 will have a lot more infected. I mean, just comparing part 1 and part 2, there's definitely a little bit more infected that we encounter in part 2 of the games, but not to a point where it's significant enough for that to be the reason why they mentioned this. You know what I mean? I feel like the reason why they mentioned this is because they saw the criticism that they got for season 1 and they took it to heart, and they actually took it as constructive criticism and basically tried to improve the story or the narrative in season 2 so that fans of the games would be satisfied, which is a good thing. That's not a bad thing. The next point is that it will cover The Last of Us Part 2. So season 2 will be The Last of Us Part 2. Not that surprising or interesting, but they did mention that it won't cover the whole second season, meaning it's extremely likely that Part 2 story will be split in two and we'll get half of it in season 2 and the other half in season 3. They did confirm that to say that it's more than one is factual, but they didn't say how many more. But I think it's fair to say that it will be 2 seasons, because even looking at the story, part 1 was half of the story of part 2 in size, so it makes sense if the first game was 1 season, the second game would be 2 seasons. The next thing that they mentioned is filming could start later this year, which is super awesome. And this is super awesome for the channel specifically as well, because as some of you may know, they filmed The Last of Us in Alberta, Canada. They filmed a lot of scenes in Calgary, Canada, which is the city that I live in. And because of that, I was able to bring you guys a lot of behind the scenes stuff months and months before we got anything official. And if season 2 is also filmed in Calgary, which is very likely, I will definitely be bringing you guys up to speed about everything going on as far as filming. So that's something that you can definitely look out for on the channel. The next thing that they confirmed is that there will be new kinds of infected, which is super interesting. I mean, they did say that also for season 1, but we didn't really see it. So that one is a little bit of a question mark for me, because they didn't even fulfill their promise in season 1. They mentioned that we'll see a brand new type of infected in season 1, and we didn't see it, unless I missed it. I mean, I don't think I missed it because the infected were so rare. So yeah, I mean, would take that one with a grain of salt because of what they already said for season 1, which didn't really happen. Next one is they said they will expand upon Tendrils system with the infected. I personally wasn't a big fan of the Tendril system that they added to the story, to the narrative for season 1, something that obviously doesn't exist in the game, but I know there were a lot of people that were interested in it and liked it, so it makes sense that they're gonna expand on that a little bit in season 2, because in season 1 we got a little bit like a tease, but they didn't really dive deeper into what it means and what type of threat it is. The next thing that they mentioned is that we could see the inclusion of spores. One of the things that many fans of the game were disappointed in was the fact that they took the spores out. So I'm definitely excited that they're bringing it back in season 2. I just hope that they explain it well in terms of why wasn't it there all along. And I hope that they didn't just bring it back to satisfy fans and not bring in with it everything else that comes with it. Like the stories that come with it and all of the super awesome scenes that came out of the spores existing. The next thing that they mentioned is that Abby and Ellie will have changing perspectives. This one's definitely an interesting one, and I think it's gonna be a very controversial one. It's no secret that a lot of fans were not happy about how much time Abby got in part 2 of the games. And with Abby and Ellie having changing perspectives, how I see that is they mean perspectives of Ellie and Abby will be explored in further detail than the game. So Abby will get a lot more screen time. That's how I take this. I could be wrong. But this is definitely one that I know for sure a lot of fans are not going to be happy about. So let's see what ends up happening, and let's see if they can change fans' opinions about Abby. The next point is that side character stories like Bill and Frank in season 1 will be explored. Examples for season 2 are the WLF group or the Washington Liberal Front, the Seraphites, Jackson, etc. And I think that makes a lot of sense, and that was one of the things that a lot of fans were excited about when the TV show came, because we don't just want to see the story of Joel and Ellie. We want to see this universe expanded and fleshed out. But one thing I will say though is that I hope they don't take the route that they did in season 1 with the Hunters. The reason why I say that is because even though that was great, it felt like they rushed it. You know what I mean? So I hope that they don't just give us all of these side stories, but rush each and every one of them. I hope that they give us a good depth for each of these groups and for each of these characters or side characters. The next point is release date will likely be around 2024, 2025, which makes sense if they're gonna start filming at the end of this year. The show's obviously not gonna come out until later in 2024, which is definitely a long time to have to wait. And that's exactly why I think one thing they do need to do is market the second season a lot more than the first. And by market the season, I don't mean just give us a trailer. I mean, give us promotional posters, give us behind the scenes stuff, and give us like early photos and stuff like that to get us to season 2. Because if we have to wait as long as we did for season 1, as far as when they confirmed there will be a TV show until it was done, then it's gonna be bad. And what I mean by that is not releasing a lot of promotional material, because let's be honest, the promotional material for season 1 before it started was minimal, to say the least. The next point on here is that there will be a time skip. That makes sense. That's not a surprise. There was a time skip in the game. There will be one in the show, so that makes sense. The next point, Joel and Ellie's relationship post season 1's ending will be heavily explored. That is awesome, and I'm glad that they're doing that. The main reason why fans criticized part 2, well, one of the reasons was that they didn't expand on Joel and Ellie's story after season 1, and we got very minimal interactions between the two, and their relationship wasn't really further expanded in part 2. So this is also one thing that I'm happy they're doing for season 2 of the TV adaptation, because that means that a lot of the negative points from the game will possibly be addressed. The last point on here is that Ellie's violent path will be explored. I don't think anyone is really surprised about that. If you've played the second game, you know exactly what stuff they're referring to, and we could potentially see what paths they could go down in terms of exploring Ellie's violent path and possibly violent past, if they kind of give us some flashbacks as far as what happened to her after the events of season 1, which we're not going to really see in the current timeline, but they might go back to it and kind of bring it in throughout the season. But that's pretty much everything I wanted to go through in this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video.